Rise is a web-based tool that allows instructional designers and e-learning developers to create training very quickly. Though Rise is relatively easy to use, there are still some things you have to keep in mind while creating content with it. In this video, I'll give you 6 tips for developing courses using Articulate Rise 360 or Rise.com. First, ensure that your training has a clear introduction and an end. Properly introduce the topic of the lesson and the learning objectives. What exactly is it that you will be covering in your Rise training? And what will learners be able to do or know upon completion? At the end of your training, revisit the learning objectives and direct your learners to other resources on the subject if necessary. Second, remember the CRAP principles, as described by Robin Williams in her book, The Non-Designer's Design Book. CRAP stands for contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. These are 4 important elements for the organization of information. Make sure that there is enough contrast between your text and background so it is accessible by all. When in doubt, use WebAIM's contrast checker to verify if there is enough contrast between the colors you selected. As for repetition, Rise naturally does a pretty good job in being consistent and cohesive in its interface, but make sure to consistently use the same block throughout for its intended purpose. For instance, use the process block for procedural knowledge and the scenario block for situated learning. Also ensure that your content is properly and consistently aligned on the page. Finally, make sure the elements that relate to each other are properly grouped and that their relationship is clear. Third, provide clear instructions on how to navigate specific blocks in Rise. Though the Rise interface is pretty intuitive, not every learner will be able to immediately figure out where to click to view information provided in interactive blocks, such as the accordion and the labeled graphic. When writing these instructions, take your target audience into consideration to decide exactly what level of detail to provide. My recommendation is to provide as much literal instruction as possible and say, for instance, click on the plus icon to interact with the different components of the image when giving instructions for labeled graphics. Providing these instructions can not only reduce cognitive load, but also communicate the importance of interacting with that learning component. Fourth, when adding media such as audio and video to your course, ensure that the importance of engaging with that component is clearly communicated. What does your video or audio consist of? Is there any specific content within that learners should be paying special attention to or focusing on? In addition to that, the media you selected should also contain captions or a text equivalent, so the information provided is also accessible to deaf and hearing impaired learners. Fifth, if none of the content provided in a given lesson is optional, require that learners interact with all the blocks before continuing to the next lesson. Not doing so may result in learners skipping parts of the content altogether. This tip is particularly important for lessons that contain knowledge checks. Sixth and last, spell check. Proofread a lot. Rise courses tend to be text heavy, so make sure that your writing is polished, clear, and free of errors. Clear and error-free writing will make for a better learning experience. My recommendation is that you first use word processing software, such as Microsoft Word, to write your content. Make any corrections needed, and then transfer your polished writing to Rise. You can also use other grammar checker tools, such as Grammarly or Ginger. That is all for today. Let me know if you have any other questions.